Okay, this is part 37 of Rebel. Loud booms, pops, firework noises might still be happening. So trigger warning for that. Outside, I have no control over what other people do, unfortunately. Not that I would want that pressure. That okay, moving on. Like, comment, and subscribe if you are enjoying this. It really helps me out. Okay. Okay, Eden. The only way I can tell that night has fallen is by the blackness of the skylights in the building. Outside, beyond Ross City's biodome, the open tundra must look like nothing more than a pitch-dark sea. Even from inside, I can hear the roar of the wind across the empty plains. Pressa and I are alone with Han now, in a room that looks like it's operating as his office. Outside the doors stand his guards. Inside it's just him, seated warily against a chair, and for the first time he looks like a vulnerable man. Pressa stands over him and holds out a single vial. "These may make you cough a little at first," she warns as she presses one into the palm of his hand. "But they'll start to kick in soon after you swallow it. You're supposed to take one a day." Han gives her a weary look, but doesn't move to stop her. His guards outside aren't looking out at the rest of the building, but inside at us. Their guns are hoisted. If they even sniff the slightest hint of us trying to poison or sabotage Han, they'll fill us with bullets faster than we'll ever be able to explain ourselves. So Pressa moves slowly, emphasizing each of her words. I find myself marveling yet again at how calm she can stay. "How long has your family lived in the Undercity?" Dominic Hahn asks her as she pours the contents of the vial into a cup and mixes it with hot water. Pressa doesn't say anything for a second. Her concentration stays on the mixture she's preparing. "As long as I can remember," she replies. "My grandparents came to Ross City when they were fleeing chaos in their own country. They ended up in the Undercity. My dad says the apothecary first belonged to them." "I see," he says. He's testing her, I realize, with the way he watches her as she stirs the concoction. He's looking for something unusual in her gaze, the secret of why we must really be here. But he doesn't stop her as she works. I realize that, maybe, he's genuinely hopeful this will work. As she works, I speak up. I clear my throat and lean forward from the desk I'm seated on. "Like you said," I tell Han, the military's not going to stay back forever. We don't have much time. What do you need done on your system?" Han tilts his chin at me. "You'll be in charge of installing a hack on the system that redirects all leveling to be under my control," he replies. A chill courses through my veins, as cold as winter wind outside. Our assumptions had been right after all. He's going to make himself the sole dictator of what's legal and illegal. I blink, feigning shock instead of the scope of the hack. "A program that can do that?" I ask. "It'll take far too long." Han observes me with his penetrating stare. "Not if you're working on it," he replies. "I'm told it's a simple matter of installing a new chip on the system. You'll take a look at it tomorrow night." Tomorrow night. It's too late. If I'm going to keep with our plan, I need to dismantle things and install our own chip sooner than that. I frown at Han. "Show me the system tonight. If it needs to be done manually, I'm going to need all the time I can get." Han studies the liquid in his mug. Nearby, Pressa holds her breath. "You're going to do it when I tell you," he replies. The command in his voice is cool and detached, so used to being obeyed that he doesn't even bother questioning whether or not I will. But I start to protest again. In the blink of an eye, he whips a hand out at Pressa and seizes her wrist right as she starts to pull away. She gasps. I freeze. Han looks at her with an unblinking gaze, and then finally releases her. There's an unspoken threat in his words as he turns his eyes back to me. He's suspicious of why I want access so soon to his system, why I'm not questioning his ambition. He's telling me that he could easily snap Pressa's wrists, that he could slit my throat and leave our bodies in the streets like he's done with so many others. It's easy to forget that Han is known for being a cold-blooded killer. The sudden flip between this and his vulnerable, exhausted self leaves me reeling. "After you," he says to her as he holds out the mug that she's handed him. To my amazement, Pressa doesn't falter. Instead, she nods and holds the cup up. She takes a long sip. I have to stop myself from reacting as she does and giving us all away, but my muscles feel weak with tension at her move. Does this mean the effects will hit her too? Did she guess this might happen? "You might feel a little weak tonight," she says to Han when she's swallowed some of the drink. Her voice has a slight tremor in it, but she manages to keep her words slow and measured. "Some clear liquid may come up in your coughs, but it's a good sign that the medication is working. If the liquid looks dark, we'll need to give you some antibiotics." Han waits, watching her, but she just meets his gaze with her own calm one, and if I didn't know what we were doing, I'd think she was genuine, nothing more than someone following through with what she'd promised him. For a moment, I don't think we'll get away with it. Then his cold gaze disappears. He leans back, looking more satisfied now that Pressa has drunk enough of the serum herself. I'll show you the system tonight, he says to me. Tomorrow morning, I expect you to have an efficient solution for implementing what I want. I should be able to tell that you're the top student in all of Ross City. He gives me a brief smile at that. I nod back and let out a slow breath as Han rises to his feet. He straightens his jacket, looks once at Pressa, and gives her a terse nod. Tomorrow, we'll talk again. I appreciate your help. It's not spoken with gratitude. There's a promise in there, a confirmation that tomorrow we're going to have to face him again. I just follow Pressa and murmur an agreement, then head out of the room behind him. My eyes stay lowered, but I keep my attention on Pressa beside me. If we can survive the night, we just might make it out of here. But if things go wrong, I may have just overreached for the last time. Pressa and I are allowed to stay in the same room with a set of twin bunks stacked on top of each other. Guards are stationed right outside the entrance. We're to take our dinner in here, and I'm going to be shown where the system is kept. The instant we close the door, Pressa reaches into her pocket and puts a pill in her mouth. What's that? I ask her. The antidote, she murmurs to me before she swallows it. She makes a face. Ugh, so bitter. The antidote. I shake my head in disbelief. You'd planned for him to ask you to do something like that? She blinks. Of course, she replies. You always have an antidote for every concoction you make. We feed our customers this stuff. I realize with a pang that she still talks about the apothecary as if her father were alive. You handle that like you've always known how to do it, I say. She shakes her head, then motions for me to sit down on the bed beside her. With any luck, he's going to be down and feverish all night, tossing and turning in bed. I don't expect him to wake up until late morning. I nod. It should give us enough time to work, I reply. She looks at me. That lopsided smile I know so well from her appears on her lips, and for a second it looks like she's going to lean forward and kiss me. My heart leaps in terror and excitement at the thought. I don't know if Pressa saw something in my expression because she abruptly backs away and clears her throat. Remember the first drone race I ever took you to? She says instead. You were shaking so bad I thought you were going to pass out. I laugh along with her nervously. It had only been a couple of years ago, but I felt ages younger then. It was the first time I'd ever been to the Undercity. Period, I reply. You didn't even give me a heads up. You just tossed me right into the fray with the bets and the crowds. I was saving you some time. It's better to jump into cold water all at once instead of painfully edging yourself in. Right. We're silent for a moment. Let's say we succeed in all this, I say in a low voice. Let's say everything just resets back to how it used to be. Are you going to be okay? Your father, his shop? Pressa shrugs, trying to play it cooler than I know she feels. If we make it out of here one piece, maybe the AIS will help out Dad's apothecary. Give me a stipend that lets me pay for the repairs. Her words trail off, and for a moment we sit in silence, the weight of her father's death pressing down on us. I mean, I might have some connections, I say to her, but I feel a pang in my chest. If for some reason our plan to interfere with the level system doesn't work, Press is going to go back to her life in the Undercity, battling her way through the levels just like everyone else. I can see the struggle in her eyes as she thinks the same thing. Finally, she looks down and says, if we make it out of all this, I'd like to leave the Undercity. She says, go somewhere new, find an adventure. She's silent for another beat. I stayed for my father. Now he's gone and I don't know what to do. Then she laughs and shakes her head as if this is an impossible dream forever out of her reach. I touch her hand. You'll know, I tell her. You always have. Pressa gives me a tired smile. We sit without speaking for a moment before she looks at me again. Do you feel sorry for Han? She asks, her voice softer now. I mean, I'm not saying that he's someone we should sympathize with, but do I feel sorry for him? I'm about to say no, of course not, but something makes me stop. I think of the way Han has to have his medicine tested. A little, I end up replying, and I realize that maybe she's asking because she does. Preston nods down at the medicine bag she tossed onto the bunk bed between us. I think he might have been trustworthy a long time ago. He has the characteristics of someone from the Undercity, you know? You always find a way to make things work until the world makes it impossible, and even then you have to hang on. I'm quiet at her words. The world has thrown Pressa out, and yet she somehow still managed to hold on to the goodness in herself. had never truly wavered from what was right, and I found myself wondering about the fine lines in our lives that turn us one way or the other, that the hardships my brother June faced twisted them in one direction, while Han went in another. When this is all over, I finally say, I'm going back to the Republic. Pressa smiles again. It's a sadder expression this time, like she'd known all along, and the sadness twists my heart in a knot. I never thought you were going to stay here in Antarctica, she replies. I look at her. You didn't? Eden, you've lived your whole life with your shoes pointed in the direction of the Republic. That glints in your eyes every time I see you. It's where you belong. She puts a hand on my arm, and I think back to when she'd helped me up after the others in the university had shoved me to the ground. I think about what she's doing right now with me. If I head back to the Republic, I won't get to lean on Pressa anymore. I don't know how to finish my sentence. I'll miss her. I've liked her ever since we first became friends. That when we hang out late at night, I love watching her beautiful eyes flash in the dim light, reflecting the glow of everything around her. She just smiles at me and leans closer. Just visit me sometimes, okay? She whispers. So I can see how you're doing. I swallow, searching for a good way to tell her how I feel. And in the middle of that search, I realize what I've wanted to do all along was just to show her. I lean toward her in the silence. Then I kiss her. It's a light kiss, my lips gentle against hers. She stiffens in surprise at my gesture, enough for me to pull away and give her a hesitant look. Maybe I shouldn't have been so forward about it. But before I can apologize, Pressa wraps her arms around me and pulls me back. She kisses me again, harder this time. Every thought I have scatters. I can't believe that I never knew this is what should have happened between us, that I never made a move earlier. There's a bitterness in our kiss that reminds me how little time we might have left. I pull her close, wanting more, regretting that I'd held back so long. At last we pull apart, our breaths shallow. Pressa looks down, a rare moment of fragility coming across her face. She laughs a little. I've always wanted you to do that, she murmurs, peering up at me through her canopy of lashes. Well, I murmur back, thank goodness I did something about it. Our conversation's interrupted by an abrupt knock on the door. We dart apart as one of the guards comes in. He doesn't smile at us. Instead, his eyes lock, cold and unfeeling, on mine. Hurry up, both of you, he tells us. Han doesn't have all day to waste showing you the system facilities. I stand back up and give the man a firm look. Beside me, Pressa rises and lifts her chin, steadying herself back into calmness. Right behind you, I say to the guard. He glares at me again, casts an ugly glance at Pressa, and turns around, motioning for us to follow him. It won't be long now before all our plans come to a head. Pressa and I exchange a quick glance before I follow the man out the door. That's when I realize that the tiniest insect drone Daniel gave me is no longer in my pocket. A jolt of panic rushes through me even as I try to keep my expression calm behind the man. But Pressa senses my sudden fear. She gives me a questioning look before she realizes what happened. Her eyes widen. Maybe the drone fell out of my pocket, but a feeling of dread swells in my chest. Somehow I know that it wasn't an accident. Somehow I know Dominic Han took it.